The ships came on a Tuesday morning, though later Sarah-chan would wonder why she even remembered that detail. Tuesdays had stopped meaning anything the moment those vessels appeared in Earth's sky, each one the size of a city, their hulls shimmering with colors that hurt to look at directly. The aliens called themselves the Covenant of Blessed Worlds. They spoke every human language perfectly, their translation technology so advanced that their words seemed to form directly in the mind. They came with promises of peace, of cultural exchange, of humanity joining the great galactic community. They showed images of vast cities spanning entire planets, of species living in harmony, of wonders beyond imagination. They asked for volunteers. 20,000 humans to represent Earth in what they called the Grand Arenas, a place where disputes were settled and honor was won through ritual combat. It was sport, they said. It was glory. It was how the civilized galaxy had maintained peace for 12,000 years. Sarah had been a commander in the Army Rangers before she volunteered. She brought with her a mixed group of soldiers, martial artists, athletes, and even a few civilians who simply wanted adventure. They boarded the ships with hope in their hearts, thinking they would be ambassadors, thinking they would make Earth proud. The truth revealed itself slowly, like poison seeping into water. The journey took 3 months in suspended animation. When Sarah woke, she was on a world that the Covenant called Preparation Site Gamma. It was a prison dressed up as a training facility. High walls surrounded vast complexes where thousands of beings from dozens of species trained, ate, and slept under the watchful eyes of hovering drones. The other species looked at the humans with something between pity and amusement. The Vreks, with their armored exoskeletons and razor-sharp limbs, clicked their mandibles in what might have been laughter. The Korath, 8-armed giants who moved like flowing water, barely acknowledged the humans at all. The Sethrak, reptilian beings covered in scales harder than steel, hissed dismissively whenever humans walked past. Sarah understood within the first week. They weren't ambassadors. They were entertainment. They were prey. The first match happened on day 12. A young man named David Torres, a boxer from Los Angeles, was sent into the arena. Sarah and the others were forced to watch on massive screens that showed every angle, every moment. David faced something called a Render's Beast, a creature bred specifically for arena combat. It had 6 legs, each ending in claws that could shred metal, and a jaw that could bite through bone like paper. David lasted 43 seconds. The crowd, billions watching across the galaxy, roared their approval. The odds makers adjusted their calculations. Humans were classified as Class F combatants, the lowest tier. They were fodder, meant to die quickly and dramatically for the entertainment of the masses. Sarah stood in the common area afterward, surrounded by her people. Some were crying. Others stared at nothing, their minds struggling to process what they had seen. Marcus Webb, a former MMA champion with scars covering his knuckles, was the first to speak. "We need to learn," he said quietly. "Everything we can. Every species, every weapon, every rule. If we're going to survive this, we need to become students." Sarah looked at him, then at the others. She saw fear in their eyes, but also something else: anger. That particular kind of human anger that comes not from rage but from injustice. The kind that doesn't burn out quickly but smolders, waiting for the right moment. "He's right," Sarah said. "They think we're weak. They think we'll break. But that's because they don't understand humans. We're the species that climbed out of caves with nothing but rocks and sticks and conquered an entire planet. We're the species that split the atom, that went to the moon, that survived ice ages and plagues and wars. They want to see what humans do when we're pushed to the edge?" She looked around at all of them. "Let's show them." Over the next weeks, the humans became obsessive. They watched every match they could access, studying fighting styles and tactics. They noticed patterns. The Vreks were fast and deadly. but they always struck high first. The Korath were graceful and powerful, but they relied on established forms, moving through combat like a deadly dance. The Sethrek were nearly invulnerable from the front, but their necks were exposed when they lunged. The arena masters noticed the humans watching and laughed. Knowledge wouldn't save them from superior strength and speed. It wouldn't stop claws or plasma blades. It wouldn't make weak flesh suddenly capable of surviving when it killed the young boxer. But Sarah and her people understood something the Covenant had forgotten over 12,000 years of ritualized combat. Real fighting, the kind that happened in streets and battlefields and desperate situations, wasn't about honor or established forms. It was about survival by any means necessary. The second human to enter the arena was Maria Santos, a Krav Maga instructor who had taught self-defense to police officers. She faced a young Vrex warrior, fresh from his training worlds and eager for his first kill. The odds makers gave Maria 10 seconds. She lasted 3 minutes and 17 seconds, longer than any human before her. She didn't win, but she did something unexpected. She hurt the Vrex. She dodged its first strike, the one they always led with, because she had watched 100 matches and knew it was coming. She used a broken piece of arena debris as a weapon, aiming for the joints in its exoskeleton where the armor was thinnest. When Maria finally fell, she was smiling, because the Vrex was limping, its victory tainted by the shock that a Class F combatant had wounded it at all. The crowd's reaction changed. There was confusion mixed with their bloodlust. The odds makers adjusted their calculations again, but this time, with less certainty back in the preparation complex, Sarah gathered everyone together. "Did you see that?" she asked. Maria showed us the way. "We can't beat them with strength, but we can beat them with everything else. Our minds, our adaptability, our absolute refusal to go down easy." Marcus nodded slowly. "They want a show? Let's give them one. Let's make them pay for every single drop of human blood." The others murmured agreement. Something was changing in the humans, something the Covenant couldn't measure with their technology or predict with their algorithms. They had taken 20,000 people who wanted peace and forced them into violence. They had made humanity bleed for sport. They didn't realize yet that this was the worst mistake the galaxy had ever made. 3 months into their captivity, the humans had lost 147 people. Each death was recorded, studied, and remembered. Sarah kept a list written on a piece of salvaged metal, scratching names with a sharpened rock. The Covenant thought it was primitive. They didn't understand it was a promise. The galaxy was watching humanity now with growing interest. The odds makers still favored the other species heavily, but humans were lasting longer. They were adapting faster than any species in recorded history. What the Covenant called entertainment, humans called reconnaissance. Marcus Webb's turn came on a cold morning, though all mornings felt cold in the preparation complex. He had been studying a particular Korath warrior named Ketheric the Untouched, who had won 300 consecutive matches. Ketheric fought with 4 plasma-edged blades, 1 in each hand, his movements a blur of deadly precision. Everyone told Marcus he was going to die. The Korath were considered the finest warriors in the galaxy. Ketheric specifically had killed opponents from 70 different species. No human had ever faced a Korath and survived more than 30 seconds. Marcus walked into the arena with his head up. The crowd of billions watched as the massive Korath entered from the opposite gate, his forearms spread wide, his blades humming with contained energy. The arena was a circular space, 200 meters across, with walls too smooth to climb and a floor covered in sand that had soaked up blood from 1,000 species. The match began. Ketheric moved with the grace of a predator, his 4 blades weaving patterns in the air. Marcus didn't try to match his elegance. Instead, he ran, circling the arena's edge, keeping distance between them. The crowd booed. They wanted blood, not running. Kethrak's people valued honor above all else. To them, fleeing was shameful. The warrior's pride was wounded by this display of cowardice. He pursued Marcus faster, his movements becoming aggressive, less controlled. Marcus had counted on this. He had watched Kethrak's matches obsessively and noticed something crucial. When the Korath got angry, he always led with his upper right blade. Marcus grabbed a piece of broken arena debris as he ran, a jagged chunk of metal from some previous battle. He skidded to a stop suddenly, turning to face his opponent. Kethrak lunged forward, his upper right blade striking exactly as Marcus knew it would. Marcus didn't dodge. Instead, he moved into the strike, sacrificing his left arm to the blade. The plasma edge cut through flesh and bone, and Marcus screamed. But his right hand, gripping the jagged metal, drove upward into the exposed gap between Kethrak's chest plates, straight into the neural cluster that the Korath kept poorly protected because no one ever got close enough to exploit it. The Korath warrior stumbled. His blades clattered to the ground. He looked down at the metal protruding from his chest with something like confusion, as if the universe had suddenly stopped making sense. Then he fell. The arena went silent. 100 trillion beings across the galaxy stopped breathing for a moment. Then the noise came, a roar that shook the very air. Marcus stood there, his left arm gone below the elbow, bleeding onto the sand. He looked up at the cameras, at the billions watching, and he smiled. "That's one," he said in English, knowing the translation would reach everyone. "We'll remember all 147. And you're going to pay for every single one." He collapsed then, and medical drones rushed in to save him. The Covenant needed their fighters alive, after all. Dead humans couldn't provide more entertainment. But something had shifted in the galaxy that day. The impossible had happened. A human had defeated a Korath Blade Master. Back in the preparation complex, the humans erupted in celebration. Sarah found Marcus in the medical bay, where advanced technology was already regrowing his arm. The process would take weeks, but he would fight again. "You crazy bastard," Sarah said, but she was smiling. "You actually did it." "I studied him," Marcus said weakly. "Every species has patterns. Every warrior has tells. They've been fighting the same way for so long that they've forgotten how to adapt. But humans? We've spent our entire history adapting. It's what we do best." Word spread through the preparation complex. The other species started watching the humans differently. There was less laughter now, less dismissive hissing. The Vrex guards stood a little further away. The Zephrek trainers barked orders with less confidence. Sarah began organizing the humans into a proper network. They shared information about every opponent, every weapon, every weakness they discovered. When a human died in the arena, the others studied the footage frame by frame, learning from mistakes, identifying opportunities. Every death became a lesson. The Covenant noticed the change but misunderstood it. They thought the humans were simply getting better at the game, becoming proper arena fighters. They increased the betting pools. They marketed human matches as must-see events. Viewership reached record numbers. They didn't see the real pattern emerging. The humans weren't just learning to fight. They were learning the arena systems, the guard rotations, the technological vulnerabilities. Every human who entered the arena memorized exit locations, camera positions, and security protocols. A woman named Jennifer Kim, an electrical engineer who had volunteered hoping to see alien technology, discovered something crucial. The collars they wore, the ones that tracked their movements and delivered punishment shocks if they went somewhere unauthorized, all operated on the same frequency. And they were controlled by a central system that, while advanced, followed logical programming principles. She started teaching other humans with technical backgrounds. They worked in secret, hiding their knowledge behind the facade of broken people resigned to their fate. The Covenant saw defeated slaves. They missed the growing resistance that more humans won their matches. Not all, not even most, but enough to matter. A Marine named James Rodriguez defeated a Render's beast by using arena debris to create a trap, channeling the creature into a killing zone where he could attack its vulnerable underbelly. A gymnast named Yuki Tanaka outlasted a Sethrak warrior by using her flexibility to stay out of reach until the reptilian exhausted itself in the desert heat of the arena. Each victory was analyzed, celebrated, and added to humanity's growing tactical database. Each defeat was mourned and learned from. The humans were building something the Covenant couldn't see, a collective knowledge base, a shared purpose, and most dangerous of all, hope. Sarah watched it all from the preparation complex, seeing her people transform from frightened captives into something harder, sharper. She thought about Earth, about the families waiting for news that would never come in the form they expected. She thought about the lies the Covenant had told, the promises of glory and honor that had brought them here. She called a secret meeting in one of the complex's blind spots, a place where the surveillance drones couldn't quite reach. 50 humans gathered, the leaders and thinkers among them. "We're winning matches," Sarah said quietly, "but we're still slaves. Every victory just means we die slower, more expensively. Is that enough?" The silence that followed was heavy. Marcus spoke first, his newly regrown arms still pale and weak. "What are you suggesting?" Sarah looked at each of them. "I'm suggesting we stop playing their game. I'm suggesting we remembered that humans didn't conquer Earth by following rules. We did it by making our own." She paused. "I'm suggesting we escape. All of us. And I'm suggesting we make them bleed first." The idea hung in the air like smoke. It was impossible. The Covenant had technology thousands of years beyond Earth's. They controlled worlds, fleets, weapons that could destroy planets. 20,000 humans couldn't stand against that dot. But as Sarah looked around at the faces of her people, she saw something the Covenant had never understood about humanity. They saw the impossible not as a barrier, but as a challenge. And humans loved nothing more than proving the impossible wrong. "Tell us what you need," Jennifer Kim said, and the others nodded in agreement. Sarah smiled. "Everything. We're gonna need everything." The plan took shape over 6 months, built from stolen moments and whispered conversations. The Covenant saw human fighters growing more skilled in the arena. They didn't see the human janitors mapping electrical systems, the human medics learning alien biology, or the human technicians memorizing security codes. Jennifer Kim became the key to everything. She discovered that the Covenant's technology, for all its advancement, followed predictable logic. They had been the dominant power for so long that they had stopped expecting threats. Their security systems were designed to keep primitive species contained, not to stop someone who understood their principles. The collars could be disabled. The doors could be opened. The surveillance could be blinded. It just required the right sequence of events happening at exactly the right time. Sarah divided the humans in cells, each with specific tasks. Some would continue fighting in the arena, maintaining the appearance that nothing had changed. Others worked on acquiring weapons, tools, anything that could be useful. A third group, led by a former NASA engineer named Robert Chun, studied the ships that occasionally landed to bring new fighters or supplies. The Covenant made their first major mistake when they announced a special event. 1,000 humans would face 10,000 combat drones in a massive battle royale. It was meant to be spectacular, a demonstration of humanity's place in the galactic order. The betting pools reached unprecedented levels. The entire galaxy tuned in to watch the slaughter. Sarah knew this was their chance. The arena for the event was 10 times larger than normal. with complex terrain including barriers, trenches, and elevated positions. Most importantly, it had direct access to the facility's main power grid to support all those drones. The night before the event, Sarah gathered her people, 1,000 fighters who had volunteered, knowing many wouldn't survive. They weren't just going to fight the drones. They were going to do something that would change everything. Remember, Sarah told them, we're not trying to win their game. We're breaking it. The morning of the event, the galaxy watched as 1,000 humans entered the massive arena. They looked small, fragile, and hopelessly outnumbered. The drones, sleek killing machines with plasma weapons and advanced targeting systems, surrounded them on all sides. The countdown began. 10, 9, 8. Sarah stood at the center of the human formation, a piece of salvaged metal in her hand. It looked like a weapon, but it was really a transmitter that Jennifer had built from stolen components. 3, 2, 1. The drones attacked. Plasma fire lit up the arena. Humans scattered, diving for cover behind barriers. The crowd roared. This was what they had paid to see. But the humans weren't running randomly. They were moving to specific positions, drawing the drones into a pattern. Sarah watched her people die, each loss a knife in her heart, but she kept her focus. This was bigger than any of them done. When enough drones had moved into the kill zone, Sarah triggered the transmitter. Jennifer's hack went live, flooding the arena's systems with overrides and false commands. Half the drones suddenly turned on the other half. Explosions ripped through the air as the machines destroyed each other. The humans rushed forward, grabbing weapons from fallen drones. They had studied these machines for months, knew their weak points, understood their programming. What the Covenant saw as a massacre became a systematic dismantling. Marcus Webb, fighting with a plasma rifle he barely understood 3 months ago, coordinated fire teams with military precision. Yuki Tanaka used her agility to climb disabled drones, ripping out power cores. James Rodriguez turned drone weapons against the arena's walls, blasting holes in supposedly impregnable barriers. The Covenant's arena controllers panicked. They tried to shut down the event, but Jennifer's team in the preparation complex had already locked them out. The humans weren't just fighting in the arena anymore. They were taking control of it. Sarah's voice echoed through the facility's communication system, translated into every language the galaxy knew. You made us bleed for your entertainment. You took us from our homes, lied to us, and turned us into your toys. You thought we were weak because we wanted peace. You thought we were prey because we chose cooperation. She paused. You were wrong about everything. The humans in the arena finished off the last drones. Then they did the impossible. They breached the arena's security systems using the drone power cores, overriding doors and containment fields. Humans poured out into the facility itself. The Covenant's security forces responded, but they had never faced a real military assault. Their guards were trained to handle individual combatants, not coordinated attacks by soldiers who had spent months planning every move. The humans flowed through the facility like water, taking key positions, securing weapons, and freeing others from the preparation complex. On 2 other preparation worlds, the plan unfolded simultaneously. The Covenant had underestimated human communication skills. They didn't know that humans had been coordinating across 3 separate facilities. Using coded messages hidden in arena broadcasts and supply shipments, 20,000 humans rose up at once. Sarah fought her way to the facility's main control room. She had lost count of how many Covenant guards fell to her stolen plasma weapon. Each one had been complicit in the deaths of her people. She felt no mercy. The control room gave her access to the facility's long-range communications. She overrode the entertainment broadcast, pushing her signal to every world in Covenant space. 100 trillion beings were about to see something they had never witnessed. Humans fighting not for sport, but for freedom. "My name is Commander Sarah Chen of Earth," she said, looking directly into the camera. "For 6 months, you've watched us die for your amusement. You've bet on our blood. You've cheered for our suffering. You thought you knew humanity. You thought we were just another species to exploit." Behind her, explosions rocked the facility as humans and Covenant forces clashed. She ignored them, but you made a mistake. You took 20,000 humans who wanted peace, and you taught them war. You took people who offered friendship, and you made them your enemies. And now you're going to learn what humans really are. She pulled up files, broadcasting the truth about the harvesting, the lies, the forced conscription. She showed footage of humans being torn apart while crowds cheered. She showed children taken from Earth who died in their first matches. She showed everything the Covenant had hidden behind a veneer of honor and sport. "We're not your entertainment anymore," Sarah continued. "We're not your slaves. And we're not going to die quietly." She looked directly at the camera. "This is a message to every species watching. The Covenant lies. They don't maintain peace through honor. They maintain control through violence. And they're going to learn that humans don't break." Across the galaxy, populations that had never questioned the arena system watched in shock. Other species, ones who had lost their own people to the Covenant's games, began to stir. The Covenant's response was swift and brutal. Fleet enforcers, massive warships designed to crush rebellions, moved toward the 3 preparation worlds. They would destroy the facilities if necessary, killing all the humans along with them. The Covenant had maintained power for 12,000 years. They would not let one primitive species threaten their order. But Sarah had planned for this. Robert Chun and his team had already seized ships from the landing bays. They weren't sophisticated pilots, but humans learned fast when their lives depended on it. A ragtag fleet of stolen ships launched from all 3 worlds simultaneously. The galaxy watched as humans, who had been flying spacecraft for mere weeks, engaged the Covenant's fleet enforcers. They shouldn't have lasted minutes. Instead, they lasted hours. They used tactics the Covenant had never seen. Kamikaze runs and suicide attacks that traded human lives for maximum damage. Sarah stood in the control room, watching the battle unfold on monitors. They were losing. They had always been going to lose a straight fight. But that wasn't the point. "Broadcast this everywhere," she told Jennifer. "Every frequency, every world. Make sure the entire galaxy sees what happens when you push humans too far." The message went out. Images of humans fighting impossible odds, refusing to surrender even as their ships burned. Images of the Covenant's mighty fleet struggling against supposedly primitive prey. Images that would spark questions, doubts, and eventually revolution across dozens of worlds. Sarah knew they couldn't win this battle, but they could win something more important. They could prove that the Covenant was not invincible. They could inspire others to resist. They could make the galaxy understand that humanity would never accept chains down as alerts screamed about incoming Covenant forces and a facility shook from weapons fire. Sarah smiled grimly. The Covenant thought they were crushing a rebellion. They didn't understand they were creating a legend. The Covenant mobilized every military asset they had. This wasn't just about crushing a rebellion anymore. This was about sending a message to the entire galaxy that resistance was futile. 3 entire battle fleets converged on the preparation worlds. Enough firepower to glass entire planets. But the humans weren't where the Covenant expected them to be. Sarah had never planned to hold the facilities. They were traps, targets too obvious to ignore. While the Covenant focused their forces there, humans scattered across the galaxy in stolen ships, hijacked transports, and vessels they had cobbled together from parts. They became ghosts, hitting supply lines and communication relays. Before vanishing into space, the Covenant discovered that humans didn't fight the way civilized species did. There were no formal declarations, no honorable fleet engagements, no rules. Humans fought like guerrillas, like terrorists, like desperate survivors who had nothing left to lose. A human ship would approach a Covenant supply station broadcasting false identification codes. Jennifer's team had learned to mimic their signals perfectly. By the time the station realized the deception, it was too late. The humans would take what they needed and destroy what they couldn't carry. On the Covenant's core worlds, the broadcasts continued. Sarah had distributed the footage across thousands of hidden transmitters. Every time the Covenant shut one down, 3 more activated. The galaxy watched as the truth spread like a virus through their information networks. Other species began to question. The Vrex, who had lost thousands to the arenas over the centuries, started asking why their warriors never came home with the promised glory. The Sethrek discovered that their young were being taken not by choice, but by quotas enforced through economic pressure. Even some Korath, proud warriors who valued honor above all, began to see the arenas as they truly were, slaughter for profit. Protests erupted on 17 worlds. The Covenant crushed them brutally, but each act of violence only proved Sarah's point. The peaceful galactic order was built on fear and oppression. The humans had just been brave enough or stupid enough to say it out loud. 3 months into the war, Sarah received an unexpected message. It came through channels that shouldn't have existed, routing through systems that should have been impossible for humans to access. The sender identified themselves as Kethrix, a Korath elder who had fought in the arenas centuries ago. "Your species interests us," the message said. "You fight without honor, but perhaps honor is a luxury only the powerful can afford. We have information about the Covenant's ultimate weapons, planet killers they use to enforce their will. The locations are heavily guarded. Sharing them would be treason." There was a pause in the transmission then, but we grow tired of the Covenant's version of honor. The coordinates are attached. Sarah stared at the data. 37 facilities, each housing weapons capable of destroying worlds. The Covenant kept them as insurance, a final threat against any species that stepped too far out of line. They had never needed to use them because the threat alone was enough. She called together the remains of her command staff. They had lost thousands in the fighting. Marcus was dead, killed in a raid on a Covenant weapons depot. Yuki had died holding a corridor so others could escape. James had gone down with his ship, taking a Covenant destroyer with him. The list of names on Sarah's metal sheet had grown so long she had needed to find more metal. "This is suicide," Robert Chun said when she explained the plan. "Even if we could seize one of these facilities, we don't have the people to hold 37. "We don't need to hold them," Sarah replied. "We just need to reach them. And we need to do it simultaneously so the Covenant can't respond in time." Jennifer Kim, exhausted from months of running and fighting, laughed without humor. "You want to threaten them with their own planet killers. Use the weapons as hostages." "Exactly," Sarah said. "They think we're terrorists, barbarians without honor. Let's give them something to really be afraid of. Let's show them what humans do when we have nothing left to lose." The operation took 6 weeks to plan. Humans spread across the galaxy, moving into position near each facility. They weren't soldiers anymore, not really. They were survivors, held together by shared trauma and a burning need to make the Covenant pay for every drop of human blood spilled in their arenas. The attacks came simultaneously. 37 suicide missions launched at once. The humans didn't try to be subtle or clever. They just hit hard and fast, overwhelming the defenders through sheer desperation. Most of the teams died in the assault, but enough survived to reach the control rooms. Sarah led the strike on the facility nearest the Covenant's capital world. She lost half her team breaching the walls and another quarter fighting through the corridors. When she finally reached the control room, only 5 humans remained alive with her. The planet killer was massive, a weapon that could crack a world's crust and boil its oceans. The controls were in a language she didn't fully understand, but Jennifer had taught her people enough. Sarah's hand shook as she activated the targeting system. She pointed it at the Covenant's capital world. Across the galaxy, 37 human teams did the same, targeting the 37 most populated Covenant worlds. Sarah opened a channel, broadcasting to the Covenant's Grand Tribunal on every frequency simultaneously. My name is Commander Sarah Chan of Earth. I'm speaking to you from your own weapon facility. Designation Omega-17. I have control of a planet killer currently aimed at your capital. 36 other teams have control of 36 other weapons, all aimed at your major worlds. She could see the tribunal on her screen, alien faces frozen in shock and rage. The Blessed Council, rulers of 1,000 worlds, stared at the human who had brought their empire to the brink. Here are my terms, Sarah continued. You release every human in your custody. You return us to Earth with full compensation for what you've done. And you dismantle the arena system entirely. No more harvests. No more lies. No more making other species bleed for your entertainment. The head of the council, an ancient being whose species she didn't recognize, spoke with a voice like grinding stone. You would not dare. You would kill billions of innocents. Sarah smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You're right. We probably wouldn't. Humans don't actually want to be monsters. But here's what you need to understand about my species. We're the people who split atoms to end the war. We're the people who burned our own cities to stop invasions. We're the people who, when pushed to the absolute edge, will do whatever it takes to survive. She leaned closer to the camera. Can you really afford to bet that we're bluffing? Because if you kill us, if you even try to retake these facilities, every single human here has orders to fire. The dead man's switch is biological. It's tied to our life signs. We die. Billions of your people die with us. The silence stretched. The entire galaxy held its breath. 100 trillion beings watched as humanity bet everything on one final, impossible bluff. The council conferred in their alien languages. Sarah watched minutes tick by, each one feeling like an eternity. Her hand rested on the firing control. She wondered if she really could do it if pushed. She thought about all the humans who had died in the arenas. She thought about the lies and the cruelty and the casual evil of using sentient beings as entertainment. She thought she probably could. Finally, the council spoke. We accept your terms. The galaxy erupted. Some species celebrated. Others protested. The Covenant's grip on power had been absolute for 12,000 years, and watching it crack in real time was terrifying to those who depended on that order. Over the next weeks, humans were gathered from across Covenant space. They came in ships, thousands of survivors who had fought and bled and refused to break. Sarah stood on the deck of a Covenant vessel, now under human control, and watched Earth grow larger in the view screen. They had started with 20,000 volunteers. They were returning with fewer than 8,000 survivors. The rest had died in the arenas, in the uprising, or in the desperate battles that followed. But they were going home. And they carried with them something precious. Proof that the Covenant could bleed. Proof that resistance was possible. Proof that humans, for all their physical weakness, possessed something that 12,000 years of galactic civilization had forgotten. They possessed the absolute refusal to accept that anything was impossible. As they approached Earth, Sarah made one final broadcast to the galaxy. We didn't want this war. We came in peace, believing your promises. You made us into weapons through your cruelty. You taught us to fight through your arenas. You created your own worst enemy by underestimating what humans become when you make us bleed. She looked at the blue planet growing larger in the view screen. thinking about all they had lost and all they had learned. Remember this, galaxy. Remember what happened when you pushed humanity too far. Remember that we're not the strongest species, or the fastest, or the smartest. But we're the species that never stops. We're the species that adapts, that survives, that finds a way when there is no way. She paused. We're the species that, when you make us bleed, we make you pay for every drop. The transmission ended. The ships descended toward Earth, carrying home the survivors of the worst mistake the galaxy had ever made. They carried warnings and weapons and knowledge that would change humanity's place in the universe forever. Behind them, across 1,000 worlds, the seeds of revolution they had planted began to grow. The Covenant's power would never recover. The arenas would close, and the galaxy would learn a new rule, written in human blood and human defiance. Never underestimate the species that refuses to break. Never make humanity bleed for sport. Because humans don't just survive. They remember. And they always make you pay.